Officer Chess Dog here, and today I have to hand out a clickbait citation. Believe me, it pains me to do it. As an officer, this is the hardest thing I have to do, but there are times chess channels will exaggerate certain tactics, perhaps for views. And today I am going to hand out a citation for the center fork trick, the myth. It's a slight misdemeanor to be sure, but we're going to look at why the center fork trick is not the end of the world at all. On the board, we have the center fork trick position with the knight threatening to take on e4. We arrive there after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6 in the four knights game, and then white plays bishop to c4. The idea of the center fork trick is this. Black takes on e4, and then when white retakes on e4, d5 regains the piece and leaves black with a space advantage. Now, there have been some players with white that have tried to play bishop to f7 check to get one pawn real quick in this position before taking on e4. That is a mistake, quite serious one. After d5, the king just tucks away at g8. After castles h6, the knight moves bishop g4. Black just has a clear advantage in that position. So you don't want to do that. After d5, there have been also attempts to play bishop to b5. But after de4, knight takes e5, trying to pile on this knight on c6. After queen to g5, black has a clear advantage, attacking everything and hitting the g2 pawn. So in this position, to deal with the center fork trick, white does want to play the bishop back to d3. That is essential. Now, black has a couple of ways to mix things up here. One, for example, is the move knight to b4. That's a tricky idea, aiming at the bishop, aiming at the c2 pawn. But all white has to do here, to even get a slight edge, is to play the move knight to g3. Now, black cannot retake the bishop, because then he doesn't have any piece at all. You notice white has 3 minor pieces compared to 2 for black. White's just winning in that case. No, white has to go ahead and play e4. Excuse me, black does. But then white just plays bishop to e2, and after pawn takes knight, bishop f3, black has nothing. And basically, even if black checks, you just move the king to f1. White's going to play d4 followed by c3. He can gain space with h4, h5. King goes to g1. No problemo at all. White has a slight edge in that position as well. So knight to b4 is not a particularly good move from black. Some black players have tried to play f5 immediately. But in this case, white is fine also. White just plays the knight to c3. Then e4 is a fork. But then the bishop goes to b5. And after pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn. And look at the position. White has 3 pieces developed to 1. White is putting pressure on the pawn at d5. Black's king is more exposed, and white's 1 move away from castling. I'd love to have this position. If queen to e7 check, then just king to d1. And now the threat of rook to e1 is a big problem for black, threatening to pin the queen. And if instead a6, then you just take and then play d4. And you have these weak dark squares in the center that white can take advantage of. So f5 is no solution for black. The best move for black, is de4. To take that knight, then bishop e4, bishop to d6 to defend the pawn on e5, castles, castles, and now rook to e1. And white is already threatening bishop takes knight and winning the pawn at e5. So for example, if black plays f5 to try to gain space against the bishop, white can just take the knight. After pawn takes, knight takes e5, and it is white who is up a pawn. So rook to e8 is the main move, but then d3, white's threatening to put a piece on g5, could be the bishop, perhaps the knight can come in there and have threats against h7 or f7. So black plays h6 to keep the knight out, then white just plays h3 to control the square, and after bishop d7, white plays bishop to d2, and has a perfectly playable position. There's all sorts of possibilities of expanding on the queen side. There's pressure against b7 with the bishop, a3, b4, c4, and white is doing quite well. So the vitriol against bishop c4 and the 4 knights because of the center fork trick has been greatly exaggerated. Is it as good as the Ruy Lopez? No. But if it happens to you, stay calm. You are fine. See you again soon at Chess Dog. Goodbye.